counting down 10 classic 1960s cars that mechanics hated working on. Number 10, 1961, Chrysler Imperial, over-engineered luxury that broke mechanics. The 1961 Chrysler Imperial was supposed to be the ultimate statement of American luxury. Bigger than a Cadillac, heavier than most pickup trucks, and packed with technology that looked futuristic on paper, but terrified mechanics in the real world. Under the hood sat Chrysler's massive V8, but the real problem wasn't power, it was complexity. The Imperial used unique parts found on no other Chrysler model. That meant even basic components, brake systems, suspension pieces, electrical modules, were Imperial only and painfully hard to source. In many cases, even Chrysler dealerships struggled to get replacement parts. The electrical system was infamous. Power windows, seats, climate controls, and dashboard electronics failed regularly, and troubleshooting them was a nightmare. Wiring diagrams were confusing, connectors degraded quickly, and one short circuit could knock out half the car. Then there was the sheer size. The Imperial's massive body made access difficult. Simple jobs like brake work or suspension repairs took far longer than normal, driving labor costs through the roof. Mechanics quickly learned that what should have been a one-day job could turn into a week-long ordeal. Owners loved the prestige. Mechanics hated the pain. Jokes spread through repair shops that fixing a 1961 Imperial took more time than building an entirely new car. It wasn't unreliable because it was cheap. It was unreliable because it was too ambitious for its time. Number 9, 1963 Buick Riviera, luxury that fought back. The 1963 Buick Riviera is remembered today as one of the most beautiful American cars ever built. Sleek lines, a long hood, and upscale styling made it a showroom star. But behind that elegance hid a car that mechanics quietly dreaded. Buick packed the Riviera with advanced luxury features that were years ahead of their time. Power windows, power seats, complex climate controls, and hidden electrical systems buried deep behind trim panels. When something failed, accessing it often meant tearing half the interior apart. What should have been a simple fix quickly turned into hours of labor. The engine bay didn't help. The Riviera's tight packaging left little room to work, even though it housed a massive V8. Routine maintenance jobs, starter replacements, wiring repairs, or exhaust work were frustratingly cramped. Mechanics often complained that the car was designed for looks, not serviceability. Electrical gremlins were common. Aging wiring, overloaded circuits, and failing switches caused intermittent problems that were difficult to diagnose. Owners would bring Rivieras in for one issue, only to leave with 3 more discovered along the way. Parts availability added to the headache. Many components were Riviera-specific, expensive, and slow to source, turning repairs into long waits and unhappy customers. Mechanics said working on a 1963 Riviera felt like defusing a bomb. One wrong move, and something else stopped working. It wasn't a bad car. It was just a beautifully complicated one. Number 8, 1960 Dodge Polara futuristic looks, frustrating reality. When the 1960 Dodge Polara debuted, it looked like the future. Sweeping fins, bold chrome, and space-age styling made it stand out instantly. But beneath that flashy exterior was a car that mechanics quickly learned to dread. Dodge rushed the Polara to market during an era of aggressive styling wars, and reliability suffered as a result. The transmissions were a major weak point, prone to slipping, harsh shifts, and premature failure. Mechanics often found themselves rebuilding gearboxes far sooner than expected, sometimes multiple times on the same car. Cooling issues were another constant headache. The big V8s ran hot, especially in traffic, and overheating led to warped components, blown gaskets, and frequent breakdowns. Fixing one cooling problem often revealed another hiding underneath. Then there was rust. Poor corrosion protection meant Polaras began rotting early. Floor pans, frame sections, and suspension mounting points were especially vulnerable. Mechanics trying to repair mechanical issues often uncovered structural damage that made proper fixes impossible. Electrical systems added insult to injury. Inconsistent wiring quality caused failing lights, gauges, and accessories, turning diagnostics into a guessing game. Mechanics warned owners that the Polara aged faster than its drivers. The 1960 Dodge Polara wasn't a terrible idea. It was simply style pushed ahead of engineering, leaving mechanics to deal with the consequences long after the shine wore off. Number 7. 1964 Chevrolet Corvair Monza. Different by design, difficult by nature. By 1964, Chevrolet tried to fix the Corvair's growing reputation problems, and the Monza was supposed to prove the car had matured. Styling improved, suspension tweaks were made, and handling was better than earlier models. But for mechanics, the Corvair Monza remained a car they'd rather not see roll into their shop. The biggest issue was the rear engine layout. Most American mechanics were trained on front-engine cars, and the Corvair's design flipped everything upside down. Accessing the engine meant working in tight, awkward spaces, turning simple jobs like tune-ups, oil leaks, or belt replacements into frustrating exercises. Overheating continued to plague the Monza. The air-cooled engine relied heavily on proper maintenance, and when owners skipped service or used the wrong oil, the results were costly. Burned valves, warped components, and excessive oil consumption were common complaints. Oil leaks were another constant battle. Seals aged quickly, gaskets failed, and engines left stains on garage floors wherever they parked. Diagnosing leaks on a rear-mounted engine only made the mess worse. Parts and knowledge were also limited. Many shops simply didn't have experience with air-cooled engines, and fewer wanted to learn. Most mechanics didn't even want Corvairs in their garage. Too risky, too messy, and too much trouble. The Monza was improved, but it was still a car that demanded patience few mechanics had. Number 6. 1961 Lincoln Continental Presidential Presence. Shop-level pain. The 1961 Lincoln Continental is remembered as a design masterpiece. Clean lines, suicide doors, and a calm, commanding presence made it one of the most iconic American cars ever built. But while presidents loved riding in it, mechanics hated working on it. The problem wasn't just reliability, it was scale and complexity. The Continental was massive, heavy, and densely packed. Almost every repair took longer than expected simply because of its size. Lifting it, supporting it, or accessing components required extra time, extra tools, and extra patience. Under the hood sat a huge V8 crammed into a tight engine bay. Routine jobs like replacing starters, power steering components, or exhaust parts were exhausting. Even basic brake and suspension work turned into long, labor-intensive projects. Then came the electrical systems. Power windows, seats, locks, and climate controls were advanced for the era, but prone to failure. Wiring aged poorly, switches wore out, and diagnosing problems often meant chasing faults across half the car. Parts didn't make life easier. Many components were Continental-specific, expensive, and slow to arrive, turning repairs into weeks-long waits. Owners often underestimated the cost of keeping one on the road. Mechanics joked that working on a Continental felt less like fixing a car and more like repairing a small building. It wasn't a bad car. It was simply too big, too complex, and too demanding for most shops to tolerate. Number 5. 1965 AMC Ambassador. Ambitious luxury, fragile reality. The 1965 AMC Ambassador was American Motors' attempt to compete directly with the Big Three. It was spacious, comfortable, and packed with features meant to prove AMC could build a true full-size luxury car. On paper, it looked impressive. In the workshop, it was a different story. The Ambassador suffered from inconsistent build quality. Engines that looked solid often developed cooling problems, oil leaks, and premature wear. Mechanics frequently saw overheating issues that led to warped components and blown gaskets, especially in hotter climates. Electrical problems were another common complaint. Wiring quality varied from car to car, making diagnostics unpredictable. A fix that worked on one Ambassador might fail completely on another, costing mechanics valuable time and patience. The drivetrain didn't inspire confidence either. Transmissions were known to be fragile, particularly when paired with AMC's larger V8s. Rebuilds became common far earlier than owners expected, turning simple maintenance into major repair bills. Parts availability sealed the Ambassador's reputation. AMC didn't have the massive dealer network of Ford, GM, or Chrysler, and replacement parts could take weeks to arrive. Even when parts were available, they weren't always cheap. Mechanics hated explaining why a routine repair on an Ambassador took longer and cost more than on a rival luxury car. The 1965 Ambassador wasn't terrible. It was simply overmatched, leaving mechanics to deal with the consequences. Number 4. 1966 Ford Thunderbird Luxury that punished the repair shop. By 1966, the Ford Thunderbird had transformed from a sporty personal car into a rolling showcase of American luxury. It was smooth, powerful, and packed with features, but for mechanics, it became one of the most frustrating cars of the decade to work on. The Thunderbird was loaded with power accessories, power windows, seats, locks, steering, brakes, and complex climate controls. When everything worked, it felt advanced. When something failed, diagnosing the problem was a nightmare. Wiring diagrams were confusing, circuits were overloaded, and electrical gremlins were common. Access was another issue. The engine bay was tight despite housing a large V8, and routine maintenance jobs took far longer than expected. Starter motors, exhaust components, and steering systems were buried deep, turning simple repairs into labor-heavy projects. The suspension and braking systems wore quickly under the car's weight, leading to frequent repairs. Mechanics often found themselves fixing the same components repeatedly, frustrating both shops and owners. Interior systems caused their own headaches. Power seat tracks jammed, window motors failed, and dashboard controls malfunctioned, often requiring interior panels to be removed just to reach a single part. Mechanics called the Thunderbird a luxury car that punished anyone who dared to work on it. The 1966 Thunderbird wasn't unreliable because it was poorly built. It was unreliable because it tried to do too much too soon. Number 3. 1968 Pontiac Tempest. Innovative on paper, infuriating in practice. The 1968 Pontiac Tempest was designed to be modern, affordable, and different from everything else on the road. Pontiac experimented heavily with engineering choices meant to stand out, but those same ideas made the Tempest a constant source of frustration for mechanics. The Tempest featured unconventional drivetrain layouts and components that weren't widely shared with other GM models. That meant fewer interchangeable parts and more time spent hunting for replacements. Even basic repairs often required extra research and improvisation. Durability was another issue. Transmissions and driveline components were known to wear prematurely, especially under real-world driving conditions. Mechanics frequently saw vibrations, alignment problems, and failures that were difficult to permanently fix. Engine access didn't help matters. Tight packaging made routine jobs more complicated than necessary, increasing labor time and costs. Owners expecting affordable maintenance were often shocked by how quickly repair bills added up. Suspension systems also struggled to handle everyday abuse. Worn bushings, weak mounting points, and inconsistent handling sent cars back to shops repeatedly, eroding trust in the platform. Creative on paper, catastrophic in the workshop. The 1968 Tempest wasn't a total failure, but it asked mechanics to work around engineering decisions that prioritized novelty over serviceability. For repair shops, it became one of those cars that always brought more problems than solutions. Number 2. 1960s Studebaker Hawk. Built during a company in trouble. The 1960 Studebaker Hawk looked sharp, sporty, and full of personality. But behind the styling was a company already fighting for survival. and mechanics felt the consequences every time one rolled into the shop. By 1960, Studebaker was struggling financially, and quality control suffered. Engines that should have been dependable showed inconsistent performance, oil leaks, and premature wear. No two Hawks seemed to behave the same, making diagnostics unpredictable and time-consuming. Parts availability quickly became a nightmare. Studebaker didn't have the dealer network of Ford or GM, and replacement parts were often delayed, expensive, or already discontinued. Mechanics frequently had cars sitting on lifts for weeks, waiting for components that might never arrive. Engineering inconsistencies added to the frustration. Different production runs used slightly different parts, meaning a fix that worked on one Hawk wouldn't necessarily fit another. Mechanics had to improvise, modify, or fabricate solutions just to keep cars roadworthy. Electrical systems were equally troublesome. Aging wiring and unreliable switches caused random failures that were difficult to trace, leading to repeated shop visits and unhappy owners. Mechanics said fixing one Hawk never guaranteed the next one would cooperate. The 1960 Studebaker Hawk wasn't a bad idea. It was simply built during a collapse, leaving mechanics to deal with the fallout. Number 1. 1962 Oldsmobile F85 Jetfire, America's first turbocharged disaster. The 1962 Oldsmobile F85 Jetfire should have been a legend. It was America's first turbocharged production car, years ahead of its time and packed with engineering ambition. But what made it revolutionary also made it a nightmare for mechanics. At the heart of the problem was the turbo system itself. The Jetfire relied on a special alcohol-based injection fluid nicknamed turbo rocket fluid to prevent detonation. When the fluid ran out, as it often did, the engine began knocking violently, risking serious damage. Many owners ignored or misunderstood the system, leaving mechanics to deal with the consequences. The turbocharger added heat, pressure, and complexity to an engine that simply wasn't ready for it. Burned pistons, blown head gaskets, and failing bearings were common. Diagnosing issues required specialized knowledge that most shops didn't have in the early 1960s. Replacement parts were scarce and expensive, and Oldsmobile's own dealerships struggled to keep these cars running properly. Repairs took longer, cost more, and often didn't permanently solve the underlying problems. Mechanics eventually found a brutal but effective solution. Many hated the Jetfire so much they removed the turbo entirely just to keep the car running. The Jetfire wasn't a bad idea. It was a future that arrived too early, and for mechanics, it became a car they hoped never to see again. If you think Part 3 was shocking, Part 4 goes even deeper, into cars that were rushed, banned, recalled, or nearly erased from history. So before you click away, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next. Drop a comment below. Which car would you never want to own? This is Retro Torque, where automotive legends meet the truth.